Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, let me make sure I'm up first. And I'm seeing green all around, so I am going to take it that the world is just fucking awesome. So, Congress today has been debating extending the National Security Agency's mass warrantless surveillance program. Now, they've made this case that this is purely with regards to foreign sources. And I'm going to show a video of Jake Tapper going after Donald Trump for, I guess, not understanding this or creating confusion around this particular issue. This boils down to the revelations that Snowden came out saying that the United States was essentially surveilling everybody illegally in this entire country. And to be honest, the world. I mean, we were pissing off Germany and pissing off our supposed allies by essentially surveilling their countries and their communications also. This is for an extension. Congress, House of Representatives, has voted for a 6-year extension on the mass warrantless surveillance of supposedly foreign sources. Let's dig into this a little bit more, however, because the way they're reporting this is extremely shallow. It completely misses the context that this is not purely foreign sources. What they're not telling you is that this is also American sources. Let's take a look at Jake Tapper, his rendition of this, his explanation of this. Now, he's going after Donald Trump. The overarching thing of what he's saying on this, I actually agree with. I think Donald Trump is someone incompetent. But what Donald Trump was saying in this wasn't wrong. Just because Trump is saying it doesn't make it wrong. Just because you don't like his particular sources doesn't make what they're saying wrong. Jake Tapper did this as somewhat of a hit piece, completely missing the context of what was being said. Let's take a look at this. I can agree with Jake Tapper that Donald Trump wasn't on page with his party. I can agree with Jake Tapper that he created somewhat confusion around this issue. Fair enough. I agree with Jake Tapper that the woman, his press secretary, Sanders, lied. And they continuously lie. And he thinks anytime something comes up, they ask the press secretary acts like there's nothing to see here. It's like, hey, it looks like the dog took a dump in the White House lobby. No, you're mistaken. You're mistaken. It's like, but I'm standing right here. You're mistaken. There's nothing to see here, folks. I'm going to end this press conference. There's nothing to see here. You guys have a good night. So agree with him. They make shit up. Sean Spicer, same thing. We'll make shit up. This is the largest crowd in the history of crowds. Fair enough. But what Donald Trump mentioned in this, meaning the tweet that he sent out, wasn't wrong. It wasn't wrong. Let's take a look at this. And again, there was something about this that rubbed me the wrong way when I watched this video. And it's one of those things where I had to figure out what it was. Because initially I'm like, I agree with Jake Tapper's overarching point, but there's something bugging me about it. It's this intellectual agreement with this emotional feeling of, wait a minute, there's something off in this. Let's take a look at the video. We can talk about it after.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We're going to begin with the politics lead today and President Trump throwing a proverbial wrench into a debate over a controversial national security bill this morning, and in doing so illustrating better than any bestseller ever could one of the biggest challenges for this presidency, his own impulse control, which may sometimes seem reckless. Today, the House of Representatives was set to vote on a reauthorization of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, otherwise known as FISA, specifically a 6-year extension of Section 702 of the FISA Act. That section, which grew out of terrorist surveillance priorities, allows the intelligence community to monitor foreign communications, even with people in the U.S. It was set to expire in 8 days. Here's how FBI Director Christopher Wray described the provision on Tuesday.
It is an essential foreign intelligence authority that permits the targeted surveillance of non-U.S. persons overseas. Without 702, we would open ourselves up to intelligence gaps that would make it easier for bad cyber actors and terrorists to attack us and our allies, and to make it harder for us to detect those threats. We cannot afford to let that happen.
That is President Trump's picked FBI director. Republican leaders in the White House completely on board. Earlier this week, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said reauthorizing the provision was, quote, a top priority of the administration She said the bill was necessary so the U.S. government could, quote, collect critical intelligence on terrorist organizations, weapons proliferators, and other foreign adversaries that is vital to keeping the nation safe. But then this morning, President Trump went to one of his primary sources of misinformation, Fox and Friends, with commentators that he seems to trust more than senior members of his own administration. And it was there at Fox and Friends that he heard this message at 6:47 a.m.
I'm scratching my head. I don't understand why Donald Trump is in favor of this. His woes began with unlawful foreign surveillance and unconstitutional domestic surveillance of him before he was the president of the United States. And now he wants to institutionalize this. Mr. President, this is not the way to go.
That characterization from Judge Andrew Napolitano of Fox News, who you might recall when Fox News anchors distanced themselves from him and his baseless claim that British intelligence spied on Trump at Obama's request. Remember that? Napolitano now claiming that there was unconstitutional domestic surveillance of then-citizen Donald Trump, which we have no evidence for, no evidence that it ever occurred. President Trump, however, seemed moved.
We have no evidence for that it has ever occurred, that Donald Trump wasn't surveilled. Now, I don't know about the, this UK spying on Donald Trump stuff. I don't know about that one. But Jake Tapper just said, what Napolitano just said, that your woes started from this. This is the Hill. Let's take a look at this. It looks like Obama did spy on Trump, just as he apparently did to me. Many in the media are diving deeply into the minutiae in order to discredit any notion that President Trump might have been onto something in March when he fired off a series of tweets claiming that Obama had tapped wires in Trump Tower just before the election. According to the media reports this week, the FBI did indeed wiretap the former head of Trump's campaign, Paul Manafort, both before and after Trump was elected. If Trump officials or Trump himself communicated with Manafort during the wiretaps, they would have been recorded too. But we're missing the bigger story. If these reports are accurate, it means that the United States intelligence services secretly surveilled at least a half dozen of Trump associates, and those are just the ones we know about. Besides Manafort, the officials include former Trump advisors Carter Page, Michael Flynn, Carter Page, Michael Flynn. Last week, we discovered multiple Trump transition officials were, quote-unquote, incidentally captured during government surveillance of a foreign official. We know this because former Obama advisor Susan Rice admittedly unmasking or asking to know the identities of the official. Spying on U.S. citizens is considered so sensitive, their names are supposed to be hidden or masked, even inside the government, to protect their privacy. In May, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper and former Acting Attorney General Sally Yates acknowledged they, too, reviewed communications of political figures secretly collected under the Obama administration. Weaponizing the intelligence agency, or weaponization of the intelligence agency. Intel agencies secretly monitored conversations of members of Congress while Obama administration negotiated the Iran nuclear deal. This is up top. You recall the DNI Clapper falsely assured Congress in 2013 that the NSA was not collecting any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans. What? Okay, let's try this again. Nobody wants our intelligence agencies to be used like the Stasi in East Germany, the secret police spying on its own citizens for political purposes. The prospect of our own NSA, CIA, and FBI becoming politically weaponized has been shrouded by untruths, accusations, and justifications. You recall DNI Clapper falsely assured Congress in 2013 that the NSA was not collecting any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans. Intel agencies secretly monitored conversations of members of Congress while the Obama administration negotiated the Iran deal. In 2014, the CIA got caught spying on the Senate Intelligence Committee staffers, though CIA Director John Brennan has explicitly denied that. There were also wiretaps on then-Congressional Dennis Kucinich in 2011 under Obama. The same thing happened under President George W. Bush to former Congresswoman Jane Hartman, Democrat of California. Journalists have been targeted too. This internal email exposed by WikiLeaks should give everyone chills. It did me. John Brennan, then the Obama Homeland Security Advisor, is behind the witch hunts of investigative journalists learning information from inside the Beltway sources. Note, there is a specific tasker from the White House to go after anyone printing materials negative to the Obama agenda. Oh my. Even the FBI is shocked. The Wonder Boys must be in meltdown mode. Look, the point they're making is that unmasking. Susan Rice admitted that they were looking at particular sources and they were using the quote-unquote unmasking feature in order to see who those particular people were in America. They would say, and I've even heard Snowden make this case, they would look at somebody who's communicating with someone abroad and they would say, hey, I want to unmask that particular person. Now, technically, they're pretending or they're acting as if they're looking at a foreign source, while the original point or the entire point of the entire exercise in this case is to see what's taking place with the American source. I need you to unmask the source. I'm unmasking the source. That source is an American source. Oh, what do you know? We just so happened to incidentally stumble onto an American source. We're sorry. It was an accident. Accident my ass. Jake Tapper is wrong. They were spying on Trump in this. Napolitano, he may be a kook in other cases, I don't necessarily know, but he's not wrong. The unmasking feature was a feature that was able to kind of get into these conversations between Trump and Trump's associates. So he's not insane for bringing that up, nor is Donald Trump insane for saying, whoa, 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 this guy's right. They used this shit to spy on me. Okay, let's keep going. I mean, Jake Tapper is acting as if what he's saying is just so far off the wall. Jake Tapper is wrong. It's fucking wrong. Let's keep going.
By this direct-to-camera plea, despite the fact that his own national security team has been pushing for renewal of the FISA program. So, President Trump, at 7:33 a.m., tweeted, quote, House votes on controversial FISA Act today. This is the act that may have been used with the help of the discredited and phony dossier to so badly surveil and abuse the Trump campaign by the previous administration and others. Now, that initial tweet from the president seeming to lobby against this authorization caused a lot of confusion on Capitol Hill. Republicans and Hill sources tell CNN, with a bill that regularly draws opposition in the dozens from Democrats and Republicans alike. Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi called House Speaker Paul Ryan and urged him to pull the bill in light of the president's tweet. Speaker Ryan and President Trump then spoke, which CNN's Manu Raju asked Speaker Ryan about.
We understand that you spoke to the president after his morning tweet. Is it your understanding that the president does not understand what this FISA bill is and the fact that his own administration was supporting it?
Well, look, we speak on an almost daily basis. It's well known that he has concerns about the domestic FISA law. That's not what we're doing today. Today was 702, which is a different part of that law. Section.
That's massively disingenuous. That's massively disingenuous. Yes, you may be talking about foreign surveillance, but you're acting as if you can't necessarily use that to figure out what's taking place in the United States. Unmasking, the fact that the unmasking thing exists in the first place allows them to look at what's taking place in America. Somebody in America is talking into a foreign source. Jake Tapper said in the beginning, even if that person is talking to somebody in this country, it's not just foreign surveillance, it's also surveillance in the United States, particularly if you're talking to somebody as a foreign source. Let's keep going. They're acting as if Trump is crazy on this. My point is Trump is not crazy on this. Trump is acknowledging, yes, they have the capacity to see what Americans are doing, using a fig leaf of we're looking at somebody abroad. Let's keep going.
Title 7, not Title 1. And Title 7, which we're doing today, is foreign terrorists on foreign soil.
So, President Trump did attempt another try a little less than 2 hours after his first tweet, writing this time, quote, with that being said, I have personally directed the fix to the unmasking process since taking office, and today's vote is about foreign surveillance of foreign bad guys on foreign land. We need it. Get smart. CNN asked White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, who was on Capitol Hill during this vote, if the president's tweets made matters more difficult. Kelly responded, it's not more difficult. It's a juggling act. The bill did pass the House. It's now headed to the Senate. Asked about the confusion today, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders denied that it existed.
We don't see any contradiction or confusion. The president has a great deal of understanding. This is top of mind. He was talking about it last week. He is issued a presidential memo on it. So it's not something that just happened this morning. This has been an ongoing discussion and something of great importance. The president doesn't believe that Americans' rights or liberties should be abused, but he certainly believes that Americans should be protected.
This is now standard practice of this White House to deny.
Wait, what was wrong with that statement? There was nothing wrong with that statement. Look, you know I am not a fan of Donald Trump. I don't like Donald Trump at all. I don't think Donald Trump is crazy for saying, wait a minute. We need to make sure people's rights are protected. Now, I am not naive enough to believe that Donald Trump is saying this purely because of other people's rights. Donald Trump is saying this purely because Donald Trump. Republicans tend to be unempathetic. It's only when things happen to them that they themselves become this kind of empathy thing of, wait a minute, we need to make sure this shit doesn't happen to anybody else. I didn't like it when it happened to me. So, fair enough. I don't take it as him being a lefty in this case. That being said, I don't want the government spying in this way. I don't trust the government with this particular power and these abilities. And there was a provision that they were trying to get put into the bill that would have protected American citizens that was shot down. Just shot down by Nancy Pelosi. Nancy fucking Pelosi. But let Tapper keep saying what he's saying. There's another point to this. I understand that Tapper is doing this somewhat of as a hit piece, and so he's not just looking at the issue from a larger context. But he is taking what these guys are saying completely uncritically. Well, the FBI director said this. And the NSA director said this. They said it, so it has to be the word of God. So this is what needs to be done. Donald Trump should have just did exactly what these people said. Now, part of this he's saying is because these people are on your team, you chose these people, you should follow their advice. And part of this, he's taking a hit at him because it's like you guys weren't on the same page. So what? So what? I don't understand the issue here. Most of the American public knew nothing about this. And you're acting as if this is some kind of catastrophe that Donald Trump looked at this and had questions about what was taking place. I'm missing the issue here. Yes, I would wish he was more competent. Yes, I wish he understood what was going on and everything else. Fair enough. But this seems to be minor. That's all. You're using airspace and airwaves to go after the president for something that just seems minor. Something that purely has taken place just within the beltway of something, or taken place over within a few hours. That in no way was a major emergency. Was no way it was even that big of a deal. Donald Trump saw something. He responded to something because he understood that something affected him. And yes, he didn't necessarily understand everything was around it, but what he was saying about it wasn't wrong. That's the point I'm getting at. What he was saying wasn't wrong. His secondary tweet saying, I've dealt with the unmasking thing and everything else. Again, not wrong. What Sarah Sanders is saying, the president was concerned about a particular point in this particular legislation. He wants to make sure that Americans' privacy is protected. I'm missing how that's wrong. Let's keep going.
Deny the nose on your face. Of course there was confusion. Republicans on Capitol Hill said there was confusion, and that's the very reason why President Trump felt the need to send out the second tweet to clear up the confusion. Now, beyond the merits of the legislation, and there is a good debate to have over this surveillance legislation, one we've had many times on this show, beyond that, we're left once again with a very clear illustration of a problem. The president, not particularly informed on a specific subject, fueled by his own sense of grievance, tweeting against his own administration's position. This has all happened before, relying on Fox and friends over his own FBI and CIA directors and national security advisor when it comes to national security issues they insist are life and death. Whatever you think of Michael Wolff and the book Fire and Fury and the sourcing and all that, look up, witness these facts. They're playing out in real time right in front of you. Welcome to the...
I agree with Tapper's overall point. And this is kind of what I meant when I said it was kind of experiencing this view as somewhat of an intellectual and then an emotional way. In the intellectual way, it's like, well, yeah, fair enough. Donald Trump should have understood what was going on. There was a position that was being articulated by his party and his team, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. By the same token, I don't understand the issue here. I don't understand why this is such a big deal to Jake Tapper. Donald Trump had a grievance or had an issue with what was taking place. He says something about it. And what he said about it, I actually agree with. The next tweet that came in is this kind of explanation of what was taking place, meaning, yes, everything is solved. My issue had to do with X, Y, Z. They've assured me that X, so-and-so was the point. That issue wasn't solved. That's the first point. So Trump probably should have stuck to his guns a little bit more on that. Donald Trump was right. They did unmask him or unmask elements of his team, so he was being spied on. Sanders was right, saying Donald Trump was concerned about Americans' security, but at the same token, he still wants this program to go through in order to make sure he can surveil foreign sources. I guess I don't get the gravity of this issue here. This seems like purely as a hit piece. Fair enough. With all of the issues that take place in the world, is this the thing that CNN really needs to focus on? Meaning, is Jake Tapper's talents and time and plastic face needed for this particular thing to go after the president on this particular point, on this particular issue? Certainly, there are things around the world that take place in the United States that are probably more prominent than Jake Tapper just doing somewhat of a hit piece on Donald Trump for something that was minor and insignificant. The bill passed anyway. Let's add more context to this bill, though, because they keep talking about this as if this is purely foreign. Yes, from a standpoint of pretext, we're looking at a foreign source. If that foreign source is talking to somebody in the United States, then they're looking at the person in the United States. They're unmasking that particular person. They're acting as if they can't unmask who they're talking to in the United States, meaning they are surveilling people in the States on this. They're acting as if this is purely on foreign soil. Everything is just over there. It's just over there. Tapper alluded to the fact that if they're talking to American citizens, then they have the capacity to figure out who they're talking to. There's more to this, by the way. This is New York Times. House extends surveillance law rejecting the new privacy safeguards. So there was a push, a bipartisan push, by the way, to put safeguards into this bill in regards to American citizens. The people in this bill understood that they had the capacity to look at American citizens, surveil American citizens, particularly with this unmasking process. And they wanted to put safeguards in to prevent that from taking place. It was shot down. One of the main people who were getting that thing shot down was Nancy Pelosi. Good job, Nancy Pelosi, destroying civil liberties in America. The House of Representatives voted on Tuesday to extend the National Security Agency's warrantless surveillance program for 6 years with the minimum changes, rejecting a push by a bipartisan group of lawmakers to impose significant privacy limits when it sweeps up American emails and other personal communications. But you told me that this was purely a foreign thing, that this didn't matter, that what Donald Trump was talking about, that Donald Trump was full of shit about this whole thing of, him being caught up in this. This just says they rejected the bipartisan push to impose significant privacy limits when it sweeps up American emails and other personal communications. Meaning, by definition, you're surveilling Americans. They're acting as if all of these people are crazy for bringing this up. You're surveilling Americans. This is in the first paragraph of the New York Times. This is not some article on some weird website somewhere. This is the gray lady. Let's keep going. It gets worse. The vote, 256 to 164, sitting on an expiring law that permits the government, without a warrant, to collect communications from the United States companies like Google, AT&T, and foreigners abroad, even when those targets are talking to Americans. Congress had enacted the law in 2008 to legalize a form of a once-secret wireless surveillance program created after the terrorist attacks on September 2001. What they mean is an illegal program. The program was illegal. There was surveillance, wireless surveillance on everybody across the United States, illegally. That's the key point. Nobody went to jail. Nobody was arrested. They passed the law to make that illegal thing legal. Fucking amazing. Let's keep going. The post-Snowden privacy movement secured its largest victory in 2015 when Congress voted to extend and replace one of the programs that Mr. Snowden exposed under the NSA that had been secretly collecting logs of Americans' domestic phone calls in bulk. But lawmakers, who hoped to add significant privacy constraints to the warrantless surveillance program, too, fell short on Thursday. Before voting to extend the law known as Section 702 of the FISA Amendment Act, the House rejected an amendment that would have imposed a series of new safeguards. That proposal included a requirement that officials obtain warrants, in most cases before hunting for and reading emails and other messages of Americans that were swept up under the surveillance. Supporters of the changes contended that the overhaul was needed to preserve Fourth Amendment privacy rights on the Internet era, but intelligence and law enforcement officials argued that it was unnecessary and dangerous to limit the security officials from being able to freely gain access to information the government already possessed. Hey, you don't need to worry about people's privacy. Trust us. Trust us. We're the NSA, FBI, CIA. Trust us. You can trust us. That's amazing. All intelligence agencies, be it military intelligence agencies, always have the same line. Any argument that's being made to you oftentimes boil down to some level of threat. Something's at peril, your threat is something about you is on the line. So it's, hey, it's your safety that's on the line. We need security. In order to have security, you need to trust us. You need to give us all of these additional powers that take away your particular freedoms and your civil liberties for security. Trust us. Why? Why do you trust them? Why do you trust them? What about the CIA? Is trustworthy to you? What do you want the NSA to have this much authority and this much power to warrant, without a warrant, look at your information? You didn't do anything wrong without a warrant. That's the point. Meaning the government is watching. Big Brother is watching any and everything that you do. If you're talking to somebody abroad, the government, for the most part, can look back at those logs and figure out who that person is. They wanted tepid change just to say, look, if that person is an American citizen, and if this really is for foreign spying, meaning you're looking at what's taking place abroad, forget the integrity of that, meaning the morality of doing something like that. Take that aside for a moment. If you're saying that this is purely looking at foreign sources, that the goal of this is not to spy on Americans, fine. We can agree to this, but we need to put in provisions to make sure that Americans are protected. Meaning in the same way that if you're looking at information for Americans for some kind of law enforcement thing, you would get a warrant, then you need to get a warrant for these sources, for this particular information. None of this unmasking shit where you just look at Americans who are communicating abroad in this kind of fig leaf, this incidentally picking up Americans in this. You get a warrant. They said, no, we don't want to do that. That's too much. Making sure Americans' privacy intact is too much. You will be unsafe if we need to get a warrant before looking at your information. Let's keep going. There's more. The program surveillance can be used for all foreign intelligence purposes. The sharpest points of debate centered on when information about Americans that is gathered by the program can be used for criminal investigations unrelated to terrorism. Representative Justin Amash, the Republican of Michigan who sponsored the privacy measures, expressed disappointment but vowed to keep fighting. We had a bipartisan coalition who worked very hard to protect people's rights, and we will continue to fight and continue to educate our colleagues about it, Amash said. The House bill that was approved on Thursday does contain a gesture towards requiring officials to obtain a warrant to read American emails that are collected under the program, but it is written so narrowly that it would not protect overwhelming majority of citizens' information that is queried in the warrantless surveillance repository. Another part to this that's important to know. When Obama was leaving office, Obama did something that's fucking amazing. When they're pulling this information for FISA, meaning when the NSA is warrantlessly pulling information, that information is now available to other intelligence agencies. So these guys are doing this warrantless wiretapping, warrantless pulling information from foreign sources and American sources. Call it 702, they may call it foreign all they want. At the end of the day, if they're picking up American information, then they're using that information. They can amass that information. Obama has allowed them, in leaving the office, despite calling Trump a maniac, despite calling Trump a petty dictator, despite Hillary Clinton saying that Donald Trump was going to eat babies and kick puppies, allowing foreign intelligence or intelligence services to get the information that's pulled by the NSA. meaning the NSA is warrantlessly collecting information and is now making that information available to other intelligence agencies. This is, again, the gray lady. In its final days, the Obama administration has expanded the power of the NSA to share globally intercepted personal communications with the government's 16 other intelligence agencies before applying privacy protections. The new rules significantly relax long-standing limits on what the NSA may do with the information gathered by its most powerful surveillance operations, which are largely unregulated by American wiretapping laws. These include collecting satellite transmissions, phone calls, and emails that cross network switches abroad, and messages between people abroad that cross domestic network switches. Essentially, if it's here, meaning even if it's coming from Americans, it's fair game, and that information can be shared to other sources. And if you notice, one of the other things was, it doesn't have to be terrorism. That information can be shared to other organizations, whether it's related to terrorism or not. If the NSA picks up information, one of the questions was, well, is this purely in response to terrorism? Is it? And the answer was no. That information can be used in prosecution or other prosecutions. It doesn't have to be specific to terrorist activities. Let's keep going. Let's bring in Nancy Pelosi. How Nancy Pelosi saved the NSA surveillance program. I thought Democrats were for civil liberties. I thought they were for civil liberties. And what I mean by this is, even if you tell me, look, we believe that this program is vital and official and necessary for some level of security and protection. Even if you tell me that. If somebody says, well, okay, but if you're telling me that this is not purely for Americans, and that you're not going to use Americans in this, and Americans need to have their civil liberties protected, the tepid measure that they were trying to put into this seems, like I said, tepid at best. And even that tepidity, I don't know if that's a word, but fuck it, I'll go with it. It was shot down. Let's look at Nancy Pelosi's role in this. Because the article is making a point that regardless of the White House and their administration chest thumping about getting this thing passed, ultimately, it was Nancy Pelosi's rallying her troops to vote for this and vote that bill down, meaning Amash's bill down, the security bill, or the softening of it, or the protections of American civil liberties in this particular, American privacy in this particular provision. How Nancy Pelosi saved the NSA surveillance program. The obituary of Justin Amash's amendment to claw back the sweeping power of the NSA has largely been written as a victory for the White House and NSA Chief Keith Alexander, who lobbied the Hill aggressively in the days and hours ahead of Wednesday's shockingly close vote. But Hill sources say most. What? No, that must have, sorry. All right. The obituary of, oh, I see what's going on. But Hill sources say most of the credit for the amendment's defeat goes to someone else. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. It's an odd turn, considering Pelosi has been, on many occasions, a vocal surveillance critic. But ahead of the razor-thin 205 to 217 vote, which would have severely limited NSA's ability to collect data on Americans' telephone records, if passed, Pelosi privately and aggressively lobbied wayward Democrats to torpedo the amendment. A Democratic committee aide with knowledge of the deliberations tells the Cable. This is the amendment that I mentioned before, the amendment to essentially protect the privacy of Americans in this bill. Pelosi had meetings and made a plea to vote against the amendment, and that had a much bigger effect on swing Democratic votes than the amendment than anything Alexander had to say, said the source, keeping in mind concerted White House efforts to influence Congress by Alexander and Director of National Intelligence James Clapper. Had Pelosi not been as forceful as she had been, it is unlikely there would have been more Democrats for the amendment. With 111 liberal to moderate Democrats voting for the amendment alongside 94 Republicans, the vote in no way fell along predictable ideological fault lines. And for a particular breed of Democrat, Pelosi's overtures proved decisive, multiple sources said. Pelosi had a big effect on the more middle-of-the-road hawkish Democrats who didn't want to be identified with a bunch of lefties voting for the amendment, said the aide. As for Alexander briefings, did they hurt? No. But that was not the central force, at least among House Democrats. Nancy Pelosi's political power far outshines that of Keith Alexander's. But despite the minority leader's instrumental role in swaying the vote, you won't find her taking credit. She's busy protecting her left flank from liberal supporters of Amash's amendment, some of whom openly booed her at last month's Netroots Nations conference, where she defended President Obama's NSA surveillance program. Nancy Pelosi ended up being the force that got this thing passed, meaning that killed that amendment that would have protected those securities, protected Americans' privacy. And the main part about this, or the wild part about this, is she's worried about being associated with lefties. It was a Republican amendment. It was a Republican amendment. It's fucking amazing. Look, I don't like this idea of being spied on. I don't like this idea of giving these organizations this much power and this much influence. These organizations was literally spying on Congress as Congress was in negotiations. If I am not mistaken, as Congress was deliberating the NSA thing, Congress was being spied on. This is immensely problematic. You need to gut this. You have somewhat of a criminal organization in the CIA and NSA. Now, I would admit that all countries around the globe spy on other countries. So the United States spying on other countries is not all that mind-blowing. All countries do it to some degree. Can you really call yourself the land of the free if you have mass warrantless surveillance, and at any point, if you're talking to somebody, you can be surveilled? Your logs can be taken. That information can be gone back and referenced. All of your communications are being saved. In this particular case, what they're talking about is foreign sources. So that's important. But they're missing the point that unmasking allows you to look at and sweep up Americans in that mix. Meaning, it is not just foreign sources. Jake Tapper is being massively disingenuous when he's making this argument about this. And as you're reading this stuff in the letter, you're like, well, wait a minute. This is not just for foreign sources. And what is the problem with them trying to protect Americans? At the very least, this tepid amendment should have been passed. If you actually care about protecting more American sources, if you're actually honest that this thing is purely related to looking at foreign sources or foreign enemies abroad, then there should have been no issue at all passing this particular amendment that would have protected the privacy of American citizens. Once again, your Democratic Party has failed you. Your party has fundamentally failed you. These guys are insane. Let's see. We have people here. Let's see. Blah, blah. You got a brief hoodie. I just don't trust anyone either. How one must recognize that the society in which they all live is entirely built on inequity of information. Where you have some people who just collect everything, just suck it up like a vacuum. I mean, you can imagine this is somewhat problematic. These guys are sucking up information, as much information as they can, given the capacity that at any point in time, go back to look at some previous record or bit of information in order to piece together stuff. Meaning, no, we're not looking at your communications, but at any point we can go back and look at communications that took place. Obama kept making this point, oh, we're just looking at metadata. We're just looking at metadata. Metadata, my ass. You've had mass surveillance, including surveillance outside of the country. Yes, and they're trying to say that this is for surveillance outside the country and everything else. But it's somewhat of a bogus case that these guys are making, and they full well know they're being massively disingenuous in their arguments. Yeah. Alright, guys. I am going to end this. This was more of just a heads up. I saw this and it annoyed the shit out of me. I watched that video with Jake Tapper, and I thought to myself, I understand Jake Tapper's doing a hit video. I agree with Jake Tapper's overall point that Donald Trump is incompetent. Fair enough. But just because somebody's incompetent, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything they say is going to be ridiculous. And you can imagine that if you yourself felt like you were being wiretapped, or if you were in a situation where the unmasking process is the thing that was, being used against you and surveilling your team and your unit, I don't necessarily think it's crazy at all to say, wait a minute, is that what they're talking about? Is that what they're talking about? So yeah. Dissension in the ranks. No, they weren't. I mean, it depends on what you mean by dissension in the ranks. I mean, ultimately, Pelosi was on the side of less privacy. We need the NSA and the FBI and the CIA to be able to look into your stuff, regardless of whether or not they have a warrant. That's amazing. I mean, that's an amazing perspective. Have a good night, all. Jake Tapper is a joke. That's funny, Jake Tapper. It's Jake Tapper. There are times where Jake Tapper is hit or miss. This is one of the misses. This is one of the misses. It just feels like, of all the things that go on in a world in a day, think of 1,000 things, 1,000,000 things, 100 things. Hell, you can say all of the things that take place in a state within the course of a day. Is this really what you're going to use your salary and your airwaves and the power that your organization has? Like, is this the thing that's at the top of that list that needs to be discussed, that needs to be talked about with this amazing urgency? It's a fucking waste of time. I mean, ultimately, it's a hit piece, and it's a hit piece that's not even all that honest in the way it's it being a hit piece. It's like, shit, man. It's like, come on. Hit it or quit it, Jamal. What you talking about? Do I want to hit Jake Tapper? Neither. There's this interview where Jake Tapper is having a conversation with Tulsi Gabbard. I think it's Jake Tapper. And Tulsi Gabbard had just came back from Syria, and she makes the point to Jake Tapper, the United States is funding terrorists in Syria, and they want us to stop doing that. And Jake Tapper starts stuttering. The government said it's not doing that. And it's like, it becomes extraordinarily clear at this point that Tapper, at CNN, is just a government mouthpiece. Even in this particular thing, the security agency said X. And so why is Donald Trump going against the security agency? It's completely uncritical in the things that these guys are saying. In the case where he's confronted with the reality that the United States is funding terrorists, again, uncritical. The only thing he can say is, well, the United States government says it's not doing that. I understand what the government says, Tapper, but your organization has millions and millions and millions of dollars, probably within the billions. You have vast resources to get to the bottom of all sorts of things that are going on around the globe. The best that you could respond with is what the government says it's not doing that. What does your network say? What does your resources say? You don't have people in that particular region of the globe. It's as if Jake Tapper has no capacity, or CNN has no capacity to actually find the truth. The only thing they can do is recount what the government says X. The person who just came from there is telling you what she saw with her own eyes. And your response, in the vein of state media, the government says that that's not true. It's a fucking embarrassment. Jake Tapper's reporting on the Palestinian vote was fucking disgusting. Was disgusting propaganda. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, they recount the military and they recount a particular perspective completely uncritically. The government says this, so this is what must be true. Now, except for Trump, it's almost as if they become antagonistic towards Trump in a way that they weren't antagonistic towards Obama or Clinton or any of that stuff. I mean, yeah, they might have went after Clinton for the emails, but that's because media is looking for things to, feather their nest. They want things that are profitable for them. So they want controversy and scandal and everything else. And they found a cash cow with Donald Trump. Yeah, it's just a waste of fucking time. That's all. It's just a waste of time. Yeah, alright guys. I'm going to end this. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. It costs too much money for CNN to investigate. What is their fucking job? I mean, shit, man. I mean, you're calling yourself a news network. What is your job? What is your job? If your job is news, doesn't that come along with investigation? It's like saying it costs McDonald's too much money to get a hamburger, to buy hamburgers. Well, if you're going to sell hamburgers, you're going to have to buy hamburgers. They've become this kind of propagandists that don't like to own up to the fact that they've become propagandists. Except in cases of Donald Trump. Now, if Donald Trump started bombing a country, they would fall in line. Donald Trump is presidential. He bombs and kills people, but otherwise, not so much. Kalidi, I've seen a little of Tapper's reporting about the UN and Jerusalem thing. Had to stop due to the sudden urge to throw my TV through the window. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty much, I feel you. The CEO needed a raise, so CNN cut back. Good investigations. Oh, that's fucked up. I wouldn't be shocked if it wasn't true either. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if it wasn't true. Alright, guys. You all have a good night. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks, guys.